for the drums.
Hey, Robert,
Hey, Keith.
what have you got?
I wanted to tell you a little bit more about what we talked about last time, which is how we design everyday things, the pieces of dashboards and charts that we might look at every day, but there are design elements that we don't always think about that can really add up to have a big impact and get rid of a load of frustrations.
Right, totally. Like that pebble in your shoe.
Absolutely. And if you walk several miles in that every day and that pebble never goes away, you really wish somebody would do something about it.
Yeah, totally. I'm so glad you're doing this because a lot of these things, we don't even notice they're there, but they're constantly detracting from the
Yeah.
experience until the absence of them helps you to understand, wow, that's so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're talking about here, it comes from a book called The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. And I loved this book, lots of inspiration. And I really think that there's so much value in us as practitioners and dashboard designers, anybody who's trying to communicate with somebody who's using the things that we build, like a door, like a teapot, like an oven. I think we have a responsibility
Mm,
to think about them
mm,
and to not treat them as though, it's the user who just isn't smart enough to figure this out.
mm.
And so the answer to every problem is help them be smarter. Training, documentation, labeling, like we talked about last time. Oftentimes there are solutions where changing the design itself um, helps everybody.
Design is so important. And I'm so glad you mentioned tea. You'll notice I'm constantly drinking tea through these episodes, right?
Yeah.
And as a person who drinks tea, I have to try hard to find a teapot that pours right.
Hmm.
And it's kind of frustrating. Like, why should I have
Yeah.
to do that? Why do I have to like try hard to find a teapot that can pour? Because isn't it kind of the teapot's job to just pour?
You would think, right? Yeah.
Right.
And I wonder if the author of this book is similar to you, and maybe that's why he put the teapot right there on the cover.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's dive in. I can't wait. The design of everyday things as it relates
Yeah.
to our vocation.
Yeah. Well, before we get into dashboard examples, I want to talk about something that is also very familiar to most people,
Okay.
and that's oven burners. So we've got an example here of two different styles, two different approaches to how we control, how we um, affect something on each oven burner. So the one on the left is typically what we have out there. I actually took this off of a screenshot of a product that's out there on the market. And what we have is three columns, two rows, and here's the test, just like we had on the last episode, pop
Okay.
quiz for Keith.
Quiz.
If I wanted to turn on the top middle burner, which of those knobs do you think you would use?
Top middle burner. Now you're making me do math, man. Um, I don't know. I would probably like just aim for something in the middle of the burner knob column and see which one clicks, and when it doesn't work, then move up or down one based on what
So
happened.
just trial and error, figure it out
Yeah.
until one of them turns on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what about the one on the right? What if you wanted to turn on the burner on the top right? Which knob would you use?
I mean, it's kind of self-evident,
It's self-evident, but
right?
why? Let's really stop and think slowly about why it's
Because the
self-evident.
knobs are positional. The knob's position correspond to the burner's position.
Right. they're positioned in exactly the same arrangement as the thing that they control,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
Um, but now there are some trade-offs to that, right? What are some trade-offs do you think for that design on the right-hand side, and why we don't see more of it?
Well, now there's all that empty space in that top right
Yeah,
corner, right? Yeah.
right. Yeah. So in the first episode, we talked about something that was a really simple solution, right? Just add a blue underline. There's really not much trade-off to that, except for maybe an aesthetic thing. Maybe you don't like blue. Maybe you don't want your text underlined. Maybe it just looks, I don't know.
Yeah, but if you've got a design system and in the design system that
Sure.
you're working with, the hyperlinks are gray,
Right.
you're still showing that this
Exactly.
is a hyperlink. Yeah.
So the trade-offs aren't real huge. But
Mm.
here, this is an example where following a certain design principle that makes it more usable has other trade-offs that
Mm.
maybe we should do, maybe we shouldn't.
Got it.
You have to avoid trade-offs, and you have to decide which thing is more important. Is it space usage or is it intuitive and ease of use?
Mm.
And sometimes there can be a compromise that's an effective compromise.
Okay.
In the case of oven burners, what a lot of manufacturers do is they'll add a little picture, a little set of icons or something like that, that course that has that mapping.
But there's that label thing again, right?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. But maybe that is the best solution in this case. If space constraints are important to you, because here, now you can get 6 burners instead of wasting the space taken up by one extra burner by just,
Hmm.
trying to arrange the knobs,
Mm.
right? So, do you take away a burner or do you make it easier to use? Yeah, and what are people going to buy? I wanted to mention a project that I did recently that was really fun. I can't show a picture of it here, but I'll describe it just a little bit because it relates to this mapping concept. And I think that some people listening might be able to translate it to their own scenario.
Okay.
I had some people that were really interested in how people interact with a navigation structure. And it was similar to the picture that we see here. There were several different columns, several different rows. We want to add some visuals, basically where the oven burners were, to just show how people are interacting with something on a specific row or column of that navigation menu. And there are all sorts of visuals that we can use. There's a hierarchy. There's like, this section A, section B, section C. And within each section, there's maybe 5 or 6 different menu options. And so we could just arrange it like a normal table where we've got groups and rows and it's just all in one linear row.
Oh, I see. So the thing that you're building a dashboard on is demonstrating how people navigate through some other system.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so this
Yeah.
other system has, kind of differing paths that differing journey paths that people could
Yeah.
take and so it's got its own set of rows and columns. And
Right.
what you're trying to do is in Tableau demonstrate how did people use this other system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so the way that you could think about the solutions are the same as these oven burner controls. One solution would be to just show one long list of all the different navigation buttons that you can click,
Mm.
just like the example on the left of this screen. Or we could actually arrange the chart in the same arrangement that the navigation menu itself is arranged, rows and columns, and map that structure so that when I'm looking at things in a certain section of the dashboard, that's exactly where that thing exists in the user interface.
Right. So
Um,
so I'm in the flow, right? Because it's
right.
just like the hyperlinks or the stop sign. If my Tableau dashboard looks exactly like the thing that it's reporting usage statistics of, and looking at the Tableau statistics of the usage as if I was looking at the thing itself,
Mm-hmm.
then I've got that affordance characteristic that you're
Yeah.
talking about because I don't have to reference the manual or convert, columns to rows.
Right.
It's as if I'm looking at the same interface in both places. It's just one has usage statistics, and then the other is the actual user interface that the usage
Right.
statistics come from.
Right. And this design principle is called mapping because it's
Oh,
matching
okay.
location for location.
Got it.
The location of the thing you're measuring matches the location of the chart on the dashboard.
Okay. Now it's making sense. Okay.
Yeah. So now let's talk about a more common problem, really an everyday problem when we're making
Okay.
charts that also has to do with location, and that's with sorting. So here, we've got some choices to make. And I'm going to start with this chart that's sales by category, just a very basic thing.
Mm.
Now, this is in order, but what is the order that this is in, Keith?
It looks like it's an alphabetic order by the category.
Alphabetical. Right. So, I'll just a little sidebar here about my experience with junior ROTC and the Air Force and just military experience of marching to and from lunch and breakfast and various parades and events.
Yeah, a lot of people might not know, Robert, you were in the Air Force Academy.
That's right. Yeah. And one of the things that cadets do day in and day out every single day is we sort ourselves. We put ourselves in order in order to have this little mini parade to go into the chow hall called Mitchell Hall. And visitors will come and stand on the wall by the chapel and watch this whole event take place. Thousands of people marching into lunch, basically, every day, except for weekends.
Okay, so you put yourself in sort order to go get chow.
So we sorted ourselves. And do you think we sorted ourselves alphabetically?
Probably not.
No.
Yeah.
No. We sorted ourselves tallest to smallest. Right? So when we put ourselves in formation, isn't that an interesting word? Information. We go tallest to smallest in a couple of different directions. So so that's what we do, right? Almost instinctively, after we've been building charts for a while, we just hit that sort button, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, and that really is the difference between data on the left and information on the right, is that the facts and statistics that are collected together for reference and analysis have now been placed in formation.
Right. And they convey more meaning in the chart on the right than the chart on the left.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you another design principle sort of term out there that's called propositional density. Now we're about to go real deep into bar charts here and what they are fundamentally.
Okay, so we did affordance, we did mapping, and now
propositional density.
Propositional density. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to explain what that means. What is a bar chart? It's just a rectangle, right? It's just a rectangle. That's it. Designers joke with each other about, what do you do all day? Well, I draw rectangles all day.
Yeah.
That's what I do too, sort of.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. But it's a rectangle that changes size, and it changes size based on some value. So it is encoding data based on the length of the bar, or basically the size of the rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
That's encoding number one for a single unit, a single rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we move that rectangle and put it in biggest to smallest order, now that one rectangle is not just encoding one thing, it's encoding two things.
It's a second encoding.
It's a second encoding. Now it's talking about rank.
Mm-hmm.
It's top ranked because it's located at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So that one little rectangle now has a higher propositional density, a higher density of information because it's got two encodings instead of just one.
Got it. So the density of information that's communicated by the same mark on the screen has increased because now it's dual encoded. It's not just communicating the
That's
value
right.
of the measure that it's encoding, but it's also encoding the rank relative to the others around it.
That's right.
Okay. And
Yep.
that's called propositional density.
That's right.
Okay.
Hmm. And of course, if we wanted to increase it even further, we could modify the color of
Hmm.
those bars, right? So now we've got three encodings in just one shape, one rectangle.
Right. And now the propositional density, the proposition of information that I'm communicating with the one mark on the screen is much more dense.
Right. Better space usage, more efficient communication of all of that those encodings and that information.
Mm.
That was a lot.
Yeah, but now I mean I can see, Robert, where you're getting back to the burners on the stove, right? Because um, when I arrive at the dashboard that has a higher degree of propositional density, I don't have to think as much about how does this thing work, and it's just more native and intuitive to me. Okay.
Yeah. So this is a very simple, very everyday sort of thing. And
Mm.
we think that sorting may be just the easiest thing in the world. Let's take it a step further and make it just a little bit harder.
Okay.
Now let's look at this, where we've got the same product categories and they're in formation, they're in rank order, but now we want to split it across regions, sales regions.
Mm.
Okay, and that's the column headings along the top is those sales regions. And we've
Hmm.
got four different sets of bar charts. We've got the category on the left. And so now, though, I've got a question. Which rank is binders? We know that in the central region, it's in the top three. What about in the east? Keith, what do you think? Is it top three? Maybe it's number four. Or what about the south? Can you really tell?
I don't have any idea. Yeah.
So now we're making people stop and think again, aren't we?
Hmm.
We're making people stop at the entry to the door and be like, "What? Why can't I figure this out? It's just a bar chart."
Right. School for the gifted. Yeah.
um. So when we are expanding this into multiple categories, now we've got not just rows but columns and rows. Back to that mapping example. That's where this comes in. So here's a solution. What if we move some things around a little bit? And now our left-hand side is just the rank number. And the particular product categories are overlaid on the bars themselves. So now, and I'm not going to reveal the answer to you, Keith, but now, Keith, we had a question. Is the binders category in the top three in any given region? Can you figure it
Super
out
easy to
now?
see. Yeah. South it is.
Yeah.
And central.
Yeah. South and central. What
Hmm.
about east and west?
Nope. Not in the top three.
Yeah. Right. So by putting them in formation and sorting them in this way and thinking about that, that it's going to be different in different scenarios, um, we can stop and think just a little bit more instead of just hitting that sort button or telling people, hey, if you want to see it in the east, well, click the sort button next to east. And if you want to see it in the south, click the sort button next to south. And now I'm doing a lot of clicking and
Yeah,
oh
and I
my
have to do
God.
a lot of work. And I really see what you're doing here, Robert, because you're kind of taking your designer's cap and applying a little bit of extra design work to your viz in order to move it beyond the defaults, right? So the
Yeah.
default would typically be to just have the dimension on the rows, and we have a new row for every dimension member, and then the thing we're breaking it down by on the columns, and we have another column for everything that we're breaking it down by. And instead, what you've done is you've taken your designer's cap and you've said, what if we rethink this thing And if we put the rank on the rows, and then, so what that means is that as I scan across column to column, it's not necessarily going to be the case that the one row corresponds always to binders, but rather there's an extra density to what's been done here. And the rank is the thing that's driving the rows, and now the label is showing the original dimension, which was the category.
Right. And I want to backtrack to finish this off
Okay.
to what we were talking about with propositional density. Right. So the encodings that we have here, we have the size of the bar. That's encoding number 1.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the location of the bar. That's encoding number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and add that third encoding. It could be color, or it could be
color.
just the intensity of the color,
Mm-hmm.
right? In Tableau, this would look like a highlight action, or we could, do some calculations or some other kinds of things to change the color based on some other selection, what have you. But now this bar has those 3 encodings. And now if I want to answer the question, I'm the product manager for binders, and I want to know how we're doing in each region. Do I have to think about it anymore at all?
No. Especially if this particular worksheet is inside of an interactive dashboard where I could do this other thing that's called proportional brushing.
Mm-hmm.
And choose binders somewhere else and proportionally brush my ranked bar chart by binders. Now now we've got density cooking. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So that's our next set of design principles. I've got another set of design principles for us to talk about, and that'll be next time.
Okay, super. Thank you, Robert. See you soon.
All right. Thanks, Keith.
Bye.
Wait for the drums.